Hi, I'm Dr. Lynn Koegel, and today I'm going to be talking about pivotal response treatment, or for short, PRT. Just to give you a little bit of background, PRT is an ABA procedure. It was developed by my husband, Bob Koegel, and me at the University of California in Santa Barbara, and the real focus of PRT was to speed up the intervention process. We were sitting around one day and working with kids with the traditional ABA, and we were noticing that the kids were learning, but they were learning slowly, and they didn't seem very happy. They didn't like coming to the sessions, and not only that, but the clinicians and the teachers and the parents didn't seem real happy when they were teaching the kids. So we thought there must be a better way. There must be a way that we could motivate the children to want to come in and to like the intervention. So we started on a quest to look at different variables that may be more fun for the kids and may help them learn faster. And that's how we got started on pivotal response treatment. So I'll just talk a little bit first about some basic assumptions with PRT before I go into the details of the motivational procedures. To start with, we really like to have the treatment in the natural environment. There's a lot of research to show that if you take a child out of his or her natural environment, they just don't develop naturally. So we've seen incidents of this in the literature where children were secluded or isolated. And so what we really want to do with children with autism is to make sure that they participate in everyday settings, whether it be Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, and as often as possible in regular education classes. So really just keeping them in the environments where you would have a typical child. If you go to the grocery store, take your child with you, and we'll teach behaviors in all those natural environments. The second area involves family involvement. As you know, many years ago, parents were considered the cause of the children's autism, but that theory is long gone, and people know that not only are parents not the cause of child's autism, but they're part of the solution. And we really want to have the families learn the procedures so that they can be implementing them on an ongoing basis. And parents are with their kids a lot. They're the one stable thing in the kid's life throughout their life. So they'll be with them on weekends and after school and holidays. And so we really want the parents using the procedures. But one thing related to this issue relates to stress. There's a lot of research showing that when parents have a child with autism, their stress level goes way up. And it's been really difficult to find ways to reduce that stress. I'm thinking and hoping that in the future there's more studies on stress reduction. But one thing that we have found is if parents can incorporate the interventions into their everyday routines, they're a lot less stressed. Their stress goes down a lot more than when they have to take out certain part of the day to work with their child. So we really like to involve the families, but in their natural everyday routines. And finally, there's the issue of treatment of pivotal areas. And what I mean by pivotal areas is, in contrast to the more traditional ABA procedures where we taught one behavior at a time, it took a really long time for the kids to make progress. They did make progress, but it took a long time. And when we started the search for pivotal areas, we thought if we could find some key core areas that result in widespread changes in untreated behaviors, we'd have a much more efficient and effective intervention. So we've worked over the years on trying to find various pivotal areas. A few of the areas that we've studied that look like they're pivotal, in other words, have widespread positive changes in other areas, are motivation, and that's what I'll focus on right now today, and multiple cues, responding to all the cues in the environment instead of a limited number. Initiations has been a big one, where we teach the children how to initiate interactions. Self-management, so that children or young adults or adolescents can kind of take responsibility for their own behavior. And now we're working on some studies in empathy, looking to see how we can teach empathy for individuals that aren't really showing a lot of empathetic responses. So just moving on, I just quickly wanted to show you that, just emphasize the fact that pivotal response treatment is data-based. There's hundreds of studies showing its effectiveness with a wide variety of behaviors, everything from sound, speech and language to academics. So we'll go through that in this entire course, all the different ways you can apply pivotal response treatment. But there is a lot of scientific background. There are a lot of published studies showing that it works not only in our clinic, but also can be replicated in other clinics. If you this is just an article Simpson did, but you can look at the National Academy of Sciences or the National Research Council, and they have lots of reports showing the effectiveness and the many, many studies that support PRT. So let's start now talking about some of the core variables related to pivotal response treatment. The first one relates to child choice. It's really important to give the children the choice of stimulus materials when you work with them in the intervention. So for example, if they like trains, you want to use trains to work with them. It's not, in the old days, we used to just pick arbitrarily, we would pick what we wanted the kids to learn. And now we're finding that if we pick items that they're interested in, they have a lot more responsiveness, they enjoy the sessions a lot more, they smile a lot more, and they really do a lot better. Child choice can be used in a lot of ways, even sometimes when you think there's nothing you could do with child choice, like for example, homework. Let's say, for example, the child's in a regular ed class and the teacher gives the whole class an assignment and says, this child has to do what the other children do. Then you can always give them the choice of what they want to write with, what color pencil, where they want to sit in the house to do their homework, what they want to do first, what type of homework they want to do first. So there's all kinds of ways you can incorporate child choice. You just have to use your creativity and really think about different ways you can provide choice. We even sometimes give children, if they don't want to do something, you can sometimes give them a choice of, okay, do you want to do, let's say they don't want to do their homework at all, and you might say, do you want to do math or reading? Then usually one will sound more appealing to the other. So child choice is just so important in so many areas, and we'll discuss this more in other modules. A second related area that we've studied, and I put up a few basic studies, the first study pretty much that was published in the area. There are lots that support all these different techniques, but the next one is direct and natural reinforcers. If the child responds, we want to have them learn that there's a connection between their response and the reward for that response. So for example, in the old days, we might have had held up a flashcard and had them say the item on the flashcard and given them a little treat. But that's not a natural reinforcer, and it didn't work as well. If you hold up something like, let's say, a treat that they like, and have them say the name of the treat and then give them the treat, that's a natural reinforcer. You can do this with activities, you can do this with just about anything. You can work it so that there's a natural reinforcer involved in the task. And of course, if you use child choice, it's kind of inherently linked with the natural reinforcers, because like if you have their favorite toy or something and they say the name of the toy, then you can give them the item. So they're pretty closely linked. Another variable relates to interspersal of maintenance and acquisition tasks. A lot of times clinicians, teachers, therapists, parents, adults will drill the child over and over and over again on something that they don't know how to do. And we found that that's really trying and really is frustrating for a child with autism. However, if you intersperse some easy tasks with more difficult tasks, they do a lot better. So let's say, for example, the child is learning to read. And there's a lot of words they can read, but some that they can't. If you only presented the words that they couldn't read, that would be really frustrating. But if you give them several over and over again, give them the words that they know how to read and then throw in a word they don't know how to read, it really increases their motivation, and that just makes sense. I mean, no one likes to be frustrated with things they can't do over and over again. So interspersing the acquisition with maintenance tasks really seems to help with the child's motivation. And then the other variable that's important is task variation. We really want to mix up the activities. Sometimes I even get really excited if a child is doing well and I want to do it over and over again, but it can burn the child out. So we really don't want to keep doing the same task over and over again. We really want to vary the tasks, do different tasks, different activities, and just vary them up and mix them up a little so it's not repetitive for the child. And then another important thing that we found was reinforcing attempts. We found that a lot of the children really struggle, especially initially, learning new tasks. And we found that if we use a really strict shaping paradigm where we're only accepting at least an equal response or better than the previous responses, it may really frustrate the child. but we found that if we reinforce all of their attempts, and I don't mean reinforce it when they're staring off into the space or not really seeming really enthusiastic, but when they're trying real hard, even if it's not completely correct, they need to be rewarded for all of those attempts because it's hard for them. Everything's hard for them, you know, especially communication. And if we really reward them for trying, it seems to make a real big difference in their motivational level. So all of these different areas have been studied, and we put them together in a package, in a motivational package. And our first study that we did and that we published in 1987 was working with nonverbal children, and we were teaching first words, and we had children that were, you know, preschool and elementary school that had never really talked in their life. And when we put these motivational components in a package together, the children started talking and words started coming out. And, you know, they vary in how quickly their words come out, but they really made a huge, big difference. At that point in time, there was a lot of literature showing that even with the best programs, only about 50% of children with autism were learning verbal communication at all. When we put these motivational components in and started teaching communication with the motivational components, we found that that number really improved. In fact, with the motivational components, if we start intervention before a child's 3rd birthday, we get about 95% of the children to start using verbal communication. If we start between 3 and 5, it's a little bit lower, maybe 85 to 90%. And if we start after 5, it's much more difficult. We only get about 20% of children who are completely nonverbal to start talking. Now, if they're already saying some words, then they can just take off from there. But those statistics just relate to children who have 0 words, who aren't talking at all. So early intervention is really critical, but also, as I said, the motivational components make a really big difference. Another thing that we found that we published in 1992 was that their disruptive behavior decreases a lot when their motivational components are included. They're not trying to escape or avoid the situation, and it's fun for them. They like it, they enjoy it. So the disruptive behavior goes way down. And along with that, their engagement improves. Their engagement and their affect, they're happier, they're more interested in the activity, so it really makes a big difference. So this is just a little graph from our 87 publication that I just wanted to show you that shows that really the kids were not making much progress at all in their communication and saying really very few, if any, words. But when we incorporated the motivational components, they started talking. So it really made a big difference for the children with autism who were nonverbal in this early work that we did. And like I said, in future modules, we'll talk about how the motivational components can be applied to academics and a whole lot of other areas. Now I'd like to just show you a little clip of when I was on the Supernanny show. And I'll start with, I want to show you kind of a baseline and then a little bit of our intervention. The baseline shows a little boy that I worked with on the Supernanny. He was 3.5 years old. No one had ever worked with verbal communication with him, and he was nonverbal, had like the classic symptoms of autism with social communication difficulties and repetitive behavior. So here you'll see just a little video clip of him at baseline before we started working with him. This is what he looked like.
Let's take a look and see what family we've got this week.
Hi, we're the Faceni family. My name's Trey, it's my wife Deirdre, and we have twin daughters that are 4 years old named Kayla and Marlena, and a son, Tristan, who's 3 and has been diagnosed with autism. First time we found out Tristan was autistic, Deirdre called me on the phone, absolutely hysterical. It was very hard for us to come to grips with Tristan is autistic. He's a very difficult child to raise.
We can swing later when we come outside. He lacks the communication to tell us, you know, how he feels. So whenever he's screaming, I'm at a loss of what to do. You're not gonna die because you can't go outside. He's hyper, likes to jump on the bed, spin around in circles, wants to go outside all the time.
Every now and then we'll forget to lock the van door and we'll catch him in the van. Tristan, what are you doing in here? We're just scared to death that he could get locked in there. I don't think you're supposed to be hanging out in the van.
Now I'd like to show you our PRT intervention with him, focusing on first words. As you'll see in the clip, all of the components I discussed, child choice, maintenance task, task variation, natural reinforcers, and reinforcing attempts are shown in this clip. So here we are with the family. I'm working on parent ed. We do practice with feedback where we show the parents how to work with the children, and you'll see me working with the family working on first words.
Make a massive change for this family is to develop Tristan's speech. So Dr. Koegel introduced the communication technique.
Today we started with 3 steps for working on communication. The first one was finding something he likes, and something that he likes enough that he's going to try to talk for. Tristan loves the swing, so we use that to provide opportunities for him to say swing. Just push him a little bit and get him involved in the activity, and then stop the swing and say swing.
Okay. Woo! This is the highlight of his day.
Yeah, so let's stop him, and now try to prompt it.
Swing.
The second step is prompting him to talk, and the third is rewarding him for any attempt or any good word. Swing?
Swing? Tristan, swing? You have to say the word 10 times before he'll even try to say it or attempt to say it, and he'll be upset, which that's going to be really hard for me as a mother because he's my baby.
I want him not to swing too much without saying it so he doesn't say, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, gosh.
Come here. Let's go in the house.
Let's go play. We have to keep giving him opportunities and keep working at it.
Tristan. Cookie. Cookie. Look, it's gonna be like you're betraying me, you know?
The important thing is that if he does get upset and is trying other things like crying, that they don't give it to him. I know, this is the hardest part. The first few words are the hardest. He's pretty upset. Here, look at me. You want to do everything to keep your kids happy, but you know, the only thing is he won't learn to talk that way. He's gotta, we've got to teach him the words to say and that this doesn't work anymore. Because we don't want him to be 21 doing that.
No, definitely not.
Deirdre did a great job. I felt like it was very difficult for her to see him cry. But he has to learn that if he cries, it's not a good way to communicate.
Tickle, tickle, tickles. Tickle, tickle, tickles. Tickle.
It's important that he learns that he's got to try to say the word in order to get the item that he wants.
Tickle. Tickle.
That's the first word I think that he said on command. So it was such an exciting moment.
Tickle.
I think he's laughing and saying it because he knows what he's gonna get. I started crying. I was like, oh my goodness. My son has it in him. And if he has it in him, I am all for bringing out his potential.
Got a little frustrated at the beginning, but this, you know, now he's gonna get it slowly, you know, slowly but surely.
Deirdre put in a lot of effort, and if she continues to put in this hard work, in no time, Tristan's gonna be speaking.
And that was really, really exciting when he started talking. You could see, we were just there 1 week, and we focused. He had never said a word in his life. That week that we were there, he said 20 different words, and some of the words he said lots of times over and over again. So you can see how, and I should mention also that nobody had ever worked with verbal communication with him. People had done a few signs and pictures, but he never really picked up on that. And you could see in 1 week, we got him to say 20 different words. So you could see this motivational components of PRT, how effective they can be, especially with communication, lots of other areas too, but communication really responds well to these motivational components. So that was just a really exciting week. He did so well. I'd like to show you a couple more clips. As I mentioned earlier, we like to incorporate the intervention into family routines. So this next clip I have shows us at the dinner table, and some of the behaviors that we can teach, like setting the table or helping with the laundry or helping with household chores, really when the child learns them will be a great help to the family and will help the child create some independence for later on in life. So this is just a little clip where we worked on setting the table while Mom was getting dinner ready. Dad had him help him set the table.
More involved, Dr. Koegel suggested that the family learn how to include Tristan in the daily activities.
You want to help set the table?
Come on, let's go help set the table. When we went to set the table, I was really thinking that we're gonna pick up these spoons and he's just gonna bang them together and nothing's gonna come of it. Sit down. Yeah.
And that's great, that's wonderful.
All right, let's set the other one down.
You can see how he's learning so much by helping like this.
Right.
Nice job, Dad.
Setting the table with Tristan was the most moving moment I've had with my son. He was actually interacting with me and doing the same things I was.
Nice job.
What else do we need?
This is wonderful. I mean,
He's actually going along with it. He's not just lost in his own world. He's actually in my world with me.
he's
getting
involved.
To
learn how to
Right.
do things. He's
Right.
getting involved.
Right.
He's not spacing out.
Right.
It was so important that Trey saw how successful Tristan could be. Today was a great day. He helped him set the table. He imitated his dad, and Dad was happy, and that's going to happen more often.
So awesome.
I felt so helpless, like there was nothing I could do. So to get some help and to actually hear that he's making words and to bring him into mainstream again, I don't even know what to say.
Dad was just so thrilled. You could see how emotional he got. That just made such a difference in his life to see that his son could really learn those things and really imitate him. And before, they hadn't really known what to do. So really focusing on teaching these families to help their children get involved in their everyday routines can really be helpful. And as I mentioned earlier, if we do the intervention within the everyday routines, it really reduces the stress on the family, and the kids and everybody are learning. So it really makes a big difference. The next clip I have, we had so much fun with this music session. Tristan really liked music, and so we had a family situation where we played songs and danced and had some music, and you can see how we incorporated some of the verbalizations in there. At one point we had him say 1, 2, 3, and then he said yay, and so there were a few different verbalizations in with the music routine with the family music session. And he also looked so cute because he was dancing, and it looked a little kind of stimmy in some ways, but it looked appropriate in the right context. Repetitive behavior looks just fine. So you'll see him here with our music session.
It was absolutely amazing to see Trey and Tristan make so much progress. So the next thing I wanted to do was to teach the family how to play and have fun together. So Dr. Koegel and I introduced the inclusion technique.
Thank you.
Shall we dance?
Dance, Tristan.
Dance, Tristan. Why don't you dance too?
He amazed me. He loved it. It's always hard to tell what these kids with autism are capable of. That's why it's so important that people don't give up on them and that they learn the strategies to work with them.
Yeah, Tristan was playing.
2,
3.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is amazing. This is amazing.
Dad was gobsmacked.
And this is exactly what I was saying when we don't know what to do. Now we know what to do.
I hope someday Tristan can talk to me.
He's going to need some work with socializing with other kids, so this is a great way to start, kind of doing the same activities, and you know, we can even have him later trading toys and things like that with him.
And I hope that the response that Trey saw has given him the strength and motivation to continue this every day, because what happened in that playroom was priceless.
So you could see how much he liked music, and using that as an activity and incorporating learning experiences really made a difference, and the whole family was having a great time. So in summary, just to go over some closing little bit of overview of PRT, When you use those motivational components in the ABA intervention, the children have increased responsiveness. They have a greater number of correct responses. We don't see a lot of escape and avoidance behavior. They really enjoy the session, so they're not trying to get out of it or get away from it. And they really enjoy the sessions, and actually they get more upset when they can't come to a session than when they have to come to a session. So in the old days, you know, we'd have to kind of drag them in there screaming and yelling and kicking us, and now they run in and are excited about it. They have their favorite toys, their favorite activities, and they don't really realize that they're really learning things. And the other nice thing about pivotal response treatment is we see these widespread gains in other areas. So we're really looking for these core areas where we can see positive improvements in untreated areas. There's a couple of important points to remember. PRT is evidence-based. We do collect data on a regular basis, and we do consider response to intervention. Every child's different, and we look at the treatment program. Sometimes you have to tweak them. That's why data collection is so important. And you may need to adjust the programs a little bit if the child isn't responding. So data collection is really important in monitoring the child's progress and making sure that they're steadily improving. So just in summary, coordination across environments is really important. We want everybody to do the same thing. You've probably heard of behavioral contrast. If a child has different expectations in one setting than another, or different consequences, they're really going to maybe get confused and maybe not learn as quickly. But if all the environments are coordinated, they'll learn much quicker. We also like family involvement. That's critical. We use practice with feedback, where we have the parents come in and we show them what to do, and then we give them feedback while they're working with their child. We again want to have treatment in all the child's natural environments, any place where they would be at that age if they didn't have a disability. We want to just keep them included in as many natural environments as possible, and also do the intervention in those natural environments, so they're getting ongoing treatment throughout their waking hours. And also, I just want to mention how important it is to have multiple programs going at the same time. If your child's IEP has one social intervention, that's not enough. There's not really very many studies that show that one intervention will take the child up to where we want him or her to be. So we really want to have multiple programs going, whether it's for social, disruptive behavior, communication, anything. We want a lot of simultaneous programs being implemented. And also, just wanted to mention that PRT is strength-based. My husband and I spent probably about 20 years of our life working on the area of positive behavior support and developing procedures that were not aversive for children. And this strength base can be with the assessments. We really want to focus on what the child does well, because if you're focusing on what they don't do well, it's not going to lead you to the intervention goals. So let's say, for example, if you're looking at a child and say, oh, he's 3 years old and only says one word, that's not going to be as productive as if you look at the child and say, he says one word. How did he learn that word? What is the word? How did we get there? And let's move on from there. So really trying to understand the child's strengths. And that will lead you to some intervention. And as I mentioned, we like to do PBS. It's all PBS, positive behavior support. When you have the motivational components involved, you really don't need to have a lot of programs for disruptive behavior, because the children like it. So they're not engaging in avoidance or disruptive behavior to get out of the task. And then also, if we do see some kind of inappropriate behaviors, we like to do a functional analysis. It's really important that we understand why problem behaviors are occurring. And we'll talk more about this in other modules, but it's important to understand that children, when they do have inappropriate behaviors, they really just aren't because they're naughty kids or bad kids or being inappropriate. They really usually have a communicative function. So we really want to understand any problem behavior or any inappropriate behavior. And then finally, we want, again, to reiterate how important it is that we use these pivotal behaviors. We really focus on these pivotal areas because they result in widespread positive changes and lots of untreated behaviors. And we're really in a race against time. We want the kids to catch up to their typical peers. And we can only, it just takes so long to do one behavior at a time. But if we focus on these pivotal areas, we see lots of changes without even needing to focus on every single with every single different behavior. So that results in a more cost and time-effective intervention. So with that, thank you very much for joining us today, and I hope you enjoyed this module and will enjoy our future modules. Thank you.